Well, if 2025 is shaping up to be quite an interesting year for theme parks, as you have Epic Universe coming online for Universal Studios, and a lot of people have speculated the impact that it will have on Disney World, whether it's going to hurt Disney World in the short term or the long term, or if Epic Universe is actually going to help Disney World in terms of their attendance by a spillover effect. But there's also been a lot of people that pointed to the fact that you've had declining attendance in the Disney parks. You even have Forbes writing an article, which we did a video on, talking about how the theme parks now have the lowest profit they've had in 2 years. And even Disney themselves have said that they see a moderation of demand in terms of people coming to the theme parks going into 2025. And they've even said, first part of 2025, they expect it to be lower. And then I think, again, they're saying they expect a bump from Epic Universe as the second part of the year. They're expecting attendance to go up. Whether that will happen or not, obviously we'll have to wait and see how that shakes out. And one thing Disney was hoping for was a very strong, holiday season, Christmas time, because that's typically one of the busiest times of the year, people coming into Disney for Christmas. And this is, it's weird. We would say it's the fourth quarter, but it's actually Disney's first quarter, as right now we are currently in Disney's fiscal first quarter. So this would show on the first quarter fiscal reports. But we have some data here that we're going to look at from Thrill Data that kind of shows where the attendance may be right now. And it's not looking great in terms of looking at it just the past few years if Disney was hoping for a really strong December bump from the holidays coming in. So we're going to take a look at this and talk about it here. So hi, I'm Jared with Capture the Magic. And again, this is from Thrill Data. If you're unaware of what Thrill Data is, I mean, it's not necessarily the easiest website to navigate. It's a lot of numbers, obviously. You can look at lots of different metrics. So go take a look at it, thrilldata.com. But here we're looking at Magic Kingdom, as again, Magic Kingdom is the #1 theme park in terms of attendance in the entire world. So it gives a really good indication of where Disney's overall attendance can be, because you can correlate that with average wait times. Because obviously, if there's a lot of people in the parks, you're going to have higher wait times. It's one of those things that it doesn't show the financial numbers here, but it gives you an idea, at least, in terms of the demand and perhaps the sentiment of where things are when it comes to people coming to the park. So if we look historically here, this is Magic Kingdom monthly average wait time. And this goes all the way back to 2014. So we look here in 2017, December 2017, the average wait time was 44 minutes here. If we go over to 2018, a little bit lower, the average wait time was 34 minutes. And we're actually seeing a higher bump up, it looks like in March for most of these months here. But you look here, so we go to 2019 and we look at December. And 19 was a strong year. Their average wait time here was 40 minutes. So you can see there, obviously this area here is very high. Then you have, COVID happened. Obviously the attendance has been lower then. But we look at 2021, the average wait time in December here is 35 minutes. We look at 2022, the average wait time here was 34 minutes yet again. 2023 average wait time was 32 minutes. So it was, been going down at that point. And we look at this year so far. Obviously it's not done, but we're looking so far in terms of December for 2024. The average wait time is 24 minutes. And if we just look across at this, I mean, there's not, usually you see this in September in previous years, because September is typically a pretty low time of year. But average wait time of 24 minutes, and you can just see right here, the average in terms of December, it's in a declining rate here. And I think this is an indication that people, we had a previous video talking about people not perhaps coming to Disney for the holidays for a lot of reasons. I've talked about with Disney, it's not necessarily just one thing that can cause people, or in my opinion, it's causing people to rethink either going to Disney entirely or going as often. I don't think necessarily everybody's just not going, but they're not going as often because one thing, it's the expense. It's so expensive. Now they have priced Christmas. They do the surge pricing. It's much more expensive to go to Disney during Christmas time than it is at other times of the year. So a lot of people, even though they're still going to go, may choose to go in a slower time where it's cheaper. And also that leads into that of typically it's been very busy. Holidays at Disney are very, very busy, so people don't want to deal with the crowds. Disney being more complicated. And all these things, I think, lend to people perhaps, like we talked about in the other video, of wanting to have more of a relaxed Christmas time with their family, not dealing with the, chaos that can be theme parks on, Christmas Day and around that time period. And I think for a lot of reasons, you're seeing a lot of people not go. And I think this is an indication that is actually showing that. It's not just theorizing that this is happening, that you're seeing this in the actual wait time data here of people just, if it was very, very crowded, if it was like it was in 2018, 2019, you would obviously see this in the wait times. And you're not seeing that. And I think they've been counting on a very strong December. They like to show those strong numbers coming out of the first quarter. And obviously, it looks like it's going to be higher than it was in October and November, which, for them is a good thing. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what the final numbers are. But as of right now, you're not seeing that bump that I think they were expecting, many people were expecting. And then Disney themselves have talked about that going into 2025, they're going to see a moderation of demand. They've even warned investors they're going to see a decline, maybe like a single-digit decline in profits going into 2025. And I think Disney is really hoping, I don't know, they act like they're planning on it happening. I think they're hoping and crossing their fingers that with Epic Universe coming online, that does give them a bolster in their attendance. We'll have to wait and see if that happens. And obviously going into this as well, you have the things going on with Disney themselves, but the other, it could be, to be fair, it could be that people are holding off on going to Disney as they're waiting for Epic Universe to open because they're going to go both to Universal and to Disney World. So that is a possibility that could be a factor. I don't think that's going to be the main factor or everything going into this, but that could be a factor of people holding off on these bigger trips, given they're trying to save their money. They're trying to be, more conscious of what they're getting for their dollar. So instead of going on a trip now and then maybe going on another one, they just say, we're just going to wait and go. And maybe they go next Christmas to both. Obviously, that could be something that happens. But I do think all the things going on with Disney does play into this, like we've talked about. And I also think this is why Disney introduced the Premier Pass, is trying to bolster that bottom line as they've seen declining attendance. And we even saw in the last fiscal earnings report, as the attendance was rather flat, but their profits were up slightly from the previous year. And that's basically from charging more to either the same amount of people or less people coming through those gates. So this method that they're currently doing, I've often said I don't think this is a long-term good plan, given, if Disney was the only player in town, which for a long time they kind of were. Universal was not the competitor that they are now. So previously Disney kind of could do what they wanted to do. They were in competition with themselves, and they kind of act like that now. But with increased competition, people can look over at Universal, and even with Epic Universe, you look at the tickets for Universal and Disney, it is cheaper to go to Universal. And like I've said too, you look at their hotels are better priced, and they have the newer offerings, as Disney stuff that they announced at D23 is not going to come online for a year. Who knows? I say 2028 and beyond. Obviously, Disney's going to have some shows and parades this year. They got the Bluey meet and greet coming to the parks. So they're going the meet and greet, the shows and parades route to try and at least maintain their attendance, I think, for a lot of their annual pass holders and the fans of the brand. But if I'm Disney, this is definitely a concerning trend to see this, as you see this declining, again, there's some spikes in there, but overall the decline in the wait times here, which again probably directly correlates with the decline in attendance. And I'm sure before we get the answers from the annual theme park attendance reports, we'll be able to look at the wait times here when Epic Universe opens and really see potentially the impact that it is having on Disney World. And we'll have to see how that plays out. But funny enough, we look at these trends here, we could see a little bit of a bump in the March area. As that you look historically here in some of these reds, you do see a little bit of a bump there. I think if this holds true where December is lower than it has been in the last few years, and they don't have that bump in March in terms of the wait times here, that could be a really bad indication for Disney heading into 2025 of how things are looking. And if they don't get a bump from Epic Universe, I've often said I don't really know what they do. They're probably going to offer some pretty massive discounts. They've done that in the past as they've competed with the Wizarding Worlds coming online from Universal Studios. But I think this is a very, I'll say, tricky or interesting time for Disney, because the brand damage I think they've done, the fan sentiment is definitely not what it used to be. As a lot of people, you can see in the comments on this channel and many other channels, about how people said they were going to Disney for 20, 30 years. They would go multiple times a year, and either they're not going anymore or they're not going as much. And even if they're still going, but they're not going as much, they're not spending as much money just because of the sheer cost of things, that is going to be felt by Disney. And now that the theme parks, they are the major driver for the entire company, I've often argued that Disney is a theme park company that also makes shows and has a streaming service, because most of the money comes from Disney. Even about a third, you could say, comes from Disney World itself in terms of the company, the money for the company. So if the main flagship company or aspect of the company starts getting hit on this front, Disney's going to have to do some things to try and bolster that. But I don't know what they can do in the short term. I think a lot of the issues that if this is happening, and I'm saying if, I'm not saying it is for sure, but if this is happening, this is due to the last few years of basically sitting on their hands and not, having things come online that would compete with Epic Universe in a timely manner. They just announced these things at D23 this year. And again, if you look at Disney historically with their construction, they don't construct quickly on top of things, and they're very likely, giving Universal Studios at Epic Universe a good 3, 4, 5-year run of whatever impact it's going to have in the market, really without Disney having much to answer for it. Potentially that could lead to some rough years for Disney if that, scenario plays out. I think Disney's their best case scenario during this time period, obviously Universal Studios is going to have a big bump in their attendance, but if Disney can maintain their attendance levels or maybe even get a 1 to 2% bump, I think that would be a win for them. And then from their perspective, their new things would come online. They're looking to get a bump from that when those come online. But if that doesn't happen, what are they left to do? I think you're looking at major discounts and maybe some reevaluating on the ways that they're running the parks, perhaps, because I think the thing that would make them reevaluate and change things would be the investors. And if they start seeing a hit on that stock price and investors having lots of questions, which you have seen some investors bring into question Disney's, in terms of the stock of it being like citing major competition, this current trends, and not looking, again, historically how it's looked for Disney. Could be some interesting times here. So obviously this is all speculative. We don't have any hard numbers outside of these wait times, but as 2025 goes on, we'll continue to watch this and see how it looks. Now, we were there over near Christmas. We were there about a week and a half before Christmas, and I will say it was not near as crowded as it has been in years. We've been previous years around the 14th, 15th of December, and it's a madhouse. We were there around the same time period, and it was busy. Don't get me wrong. The parks weren't empty, but we were at Hollywood Studios one of the days, and Slinky Dog Dash was a 60-minute wait, which ended up being like a 45-minute wait. Nothing was really over an hour, and that's almost unheard of during that time. We were also at the parks a little bit before the 4th of July of this year, and they weren't that crowded that day either. So I think overall, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but the parks aren't nearly as crowded around holidays as they used to be. And, it's a trend that we've talked about before where people are kind of vacationing differently now, choosing different times to go. They may be finding pockets where it's not as busy. So, again, I'm not making the case that, the parks are empty and they're deserted. They're not, but they're definitely less crowded than they were just a few years ago. And when you look at when APs are blocked out and they can't go, you're seeing much less wait times, much less crowds in the parks because not as many people are traveling from out of state or just one-time visitors coming. And I think a lot of what Disney's realizing or going to have to realize, especially as they go into 2025 and beyond, is that their annual pass holders bolster them quite a bit. And they don't necessarily like the annual pass holders in terms of they don't spend as much money as tourists, especially overseas or people coming in from out of state. Those people tend to spend more money because they stay on property. They buy, food items more. Locals don't do that as much because obviously they live locally. They can, get food outside the parks and things like that. So, the APs don't give them as much money per person. But you're noticing a trend, though, when they're not allowed to come into the parks or they're blocked out, you're not seeing near as many people. So I think Disney may start leaning more heavily on their annual pass holders as they have done previously in times when they need them. But we'll keep an eye on all this as we get into 2025 and, see how all this shakes out. But either way, that's going to be it, though, for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel as we do lots of coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, what do you think about this trend of showing these lower wait times, especially going into Christmas of this year, what that can mean going forward. And until next time, we'll see you in the parks.